Okay, so we're going to go out of order for this study guide because I want to review the graphing with you before we move on to solving. So this first one in number 3, we have which graph represents the solution set for x is less than 5. Remember, if we have the less than or greater than signs, those go with the open circles, and the less than or equal to or greater than or equal to signs go with our shaded circles. So right off the bat, we can eliminate B and C because they both have the shaded circles. So that limits us to A and D here. We're looking for an open circle on 5, and we're saying that x is less than 5. So if we are plugging in a value for x here, it needs to be less than 5. That means that all of the numbers that we want to shade are going to be these ones to the left of 5. So we want to choose answer D there. If you're struggling with these, go ahead and read them out to yourself. X is less than 5, and think about what that really means. Moving on to our next graphing one, number 6, we have 2 is greater than x. Now be careful with this one because our variable here is on the opposite side of what we're used to. So you can rewrite this as x is less than 2, and if you do it that way, then you can use the arrow trick. But if you choose not to rewrite it, just make sure you're paying attention to 2 is going to be greater than any x value that we plug in there. So that means that all of our values need to be going to the left. And the 2 that we can eliminate right away are going to be B and C, because if you notice, those circles are above -2, and our inequality is dealing with a +2. So those are just distractor answers. Get rid of those. And then again, we're choosing between A and D here. X needs to be less than 2, or 2 needs to be greater than x. So that's covered in graph A. Any of these values, if you plug those in for x, is going to make this true. Like if we put 2 is greater than -2, that's going to be true. Whereas over here, if we put a 3 in there, 2 is greater than 3, we know that's not true. So we can't choose option D there. Our next graphing problem is number 7, and we're actually going to have to solve this one-step inequality first before we can graph it. But we have z minus 5 is less than -3. So z is being subtracted by 5, so we're going to do the opposite and add 5 to both sides. And when we do that, our -5 and +5 cancel to 0, so we're just left with z. Our less than sign comes down, and then our -3 plus 5 gets us 2. That means that we're graphing z is less than 2. So right off the bat, get rid of B and get rid of C. Those are our distracting answers because they have shaded circles. We want open circles because we're dealing with less than. Now if z is less than 2, that means we need to shade to the left here. We're choosing all those numbers that are going to be less than 2 to shade in for z. Moving on to number 8, where we need to graph. We have -6x is greater than or equal to 30. So right now, x is being multiplied by -6. I'm going to divide by -6 on both sides because that is undoing that multiplication. Now dividing by a negative, that was part of our rule for whenever you divide by a negative or a positive, we need to flip our inequality sign. So this -6 divided by -6 cancels out to be 1, and we're left with x here. We need to flip this inequality and it becomes less than or equal to, and then we have 30 divided by -6, which gets us -5. So we have a x is less than or equal to sign. That means we're going to get rid of A and B. Those are open circles that we don't want. And then we're seeing that we want x is less than or equal to -5. So we want those values that are going to be to the left of -5 that are representing those less than values. Alright, now that we've kind of reviewed the graphing a little bit, let's just go through the rest of the study guide. So if you go back to page 1 and look at number 1, it says, which of the following is an inequality? And remember, we define inequalities as having a less than sign, a greater than sign, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. So get rid of this p plus 5. There's none of those signs in there. B, that's going to work. That's an inequality. It has that greater than sign. C has an equal sign. That's an equation, not an inequality. And this is k divided by 9. That's just an expression. We don't want that. So our answer there is B. And in number 2, it says, what is the solution to 2x is less than or equal to 10? So remember, our goal is to get x by itself. Right now we have 2x, that's 2 times x. And the opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. When we divide by 2 on both sides, 2 divided by 2 is 1, which gets us 1 times x, or just x. Our inequality sign is not going to flip here because we're dividing by a positive 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. That leaves us with x is less than or equal to 5, so you should have A in number 2. Moving on to the second page of our study guide, number 4, it says, which of the following is the solution to negative 2y is greater than or equal to 4? So again, we're just trying to solve for y here. We want to get y by itself. Right now we have negative 2 times y. The opposite of multiplication is division, so we want to divide by negative 2. We're dividing by negative 2 on both sides. That needs to ring a bell. We're dividing by a negative, so we need to flip our inequality this time. So this negative 2 divided by negative 2 becomes 1 times y, which is just y. Flip your inequality because we're dividing by a negative, and 4 divided by negative 2 is going to get us negative 2. Our final inequality then is y is less than or equal to negative 2, so you should choose letter B in number 4. Now moving on to number 5, we have n divided by 4 is less than negative 7. So right now n's being divided by 4. We want to get n all by itself on this side of our inequality. So the opposite of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4. We need to do it on both sides. We're multiplying by positive 4. So the number that we chose to multiply by is a positive. That means we are not going to flip our inequality sign this time. So this becomes n, our inequality stays less than, and negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. So n is less than negative 28. Don't make the mistake of flipping the sign because there was a negative 7 there to start and we're multiplying by it. Our rule for flipping the inequality is only when the number that you are writing down to multiply by is a negative, but in this case we were multiplying by positive 4, so we are not flipping the inequality. Alright, moving on to the last page of our study guide, number 9. It says identify the values of A that make the following true. So these 6 values are given as possible values for A, and they give us the inequality A plus 2 is greater than 15. So you want to first solve this for A. So we're going to say, well, A is being added to 2, so the opposite of plus 2 is minus 2. Our constant was 2. We're getting rid of that by subtracting 2. We do that on both sides. That is going to get us A is greater than 13. So basically all that means is you want to look in this table and get rid of the values that are not greater than 13. So we know 2 is not greater than 13, 7 is not greater than 13, 17, 19, 21, and 36 are all going to be values that make this true for A. So 17 is greater than 13, and so on. Moving on to number 10. Another one of these where you need to solve first and then choose. So we're looking for all the inequalities where x is less than or equal to 6. So we need to solve each of these individually and see which ones have that answer. So this one here, negative 2x is less than or equal to negative 12. Get that x by itself. Right now it's being multiplied by negative 2. The opposite of that would be dividing by negative 2. And whenever we divide by a negative, we must flip our inequality. So we get x is greater than or equal to because we're flipping. And negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6. So this is not quite what we're looking for. This first one is not an option here. So looking at the second one, we have x minus 3 is greater than or equal to 3. Our constant here is minus 3, so we're going to add 3 to get rid of it. That's going to get us x is greater than or equal to 6, and we're not flipping our inequality here because all we did was add. So x is greater than or equal to 6 is not what we're looking for there either, so we're going to cross that out. Our next one we have is x plus 5 is greater than or equal to 11. To get x by itself, we're going to subtract 5 to get rid of that plus 5. Those are opposites, they go away. We're left with x is greater than or equal to 6 once again. And that's still not what we're looking for here, so we're going to get rid of that. Moving on to that bottom row. We have x divided by 2 is less than or equal to 3. So right now x is being divided by 2. To undo that, we need to multiply by 2. that gets us x is less than or equal to 6. And that looks like what we are looking for up in this question. So that one's going to be one that we want to choose. You can check it, circle it, whatever you want to do to mark that right. Moving on to the next one, we have negative 3 plus x is less than or equal to 3. Again, you want to get x by itself. Right now we have negative 3 plus x, so our constant is negative 3. In order to get rid of that, we need to add 3 here. This is going to make 0, and we need to add 3 on the other side to keep it balanced. That leaves us with a positive x. That's just like 1x, so it's just x. It comes down by itself. This less than or equal to comes down as well, and 3 plus 3 is 6. We're not flipping our inequality because all we did was add, so this one looks good as well. It matches what our question was asking us to find. Now in this last one here, we have negative 3x is less than or equal to 18. So here, x is being multiplied by negative 3. The opposite of that would be dividing by negative 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 makes 1 times x, which is just x. And we divided by a negative, so we need to flip our inequality sign. It went from less than or equal to now being greater than or equal to. And 18 divided by negative 3 is negative 6. So that's not quite what we were looking for there. That means the answer to number 10 are just these bottom two in the left that got us the solution of x is less than or equal to 6. In number 11, it asks us to find the solution to the inequality negative 4x is less than or equal to 24, and then we need to graph it on the number line. So you first need to just solve for x here like we've been doing in this entire study guide. So negative 4 is being multiplied by x here. Our goal is to get x by itself. The opposite of multiplying by negative 4 would be dividing by negative 4. So we're going to do that on both sides. Our negative 4's become 1, and we get x here. We're dividing by a negative, so we need to flip our inequality. It becomes a greater than or less than sign, or sorry, greater than or equal to sign. And then 24 divided by negative 4 gets us negative 6. So there's our solution that we were looking for, but now we need to graph it. So I would suggest put that number that you found right in the middle of your number line, and then fill in those values next to it. So negative 6 is the number we're looking for. I'm going to put negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, and over here we have negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, and negative 10. Please make sure you're labeling your number line carefully, especially in the negatives. So we have x is greater than or equal to negative 6. So we want to put a circle on 6, but it needs to be closed because we had that greater than or equal to. So fill that in. And x needs to be bigger than negative 6. So all of these values to the right here are bigger than negative 6. So we need to be shading to the right. Now in our last one, we have find the solution to x divided by negative 5 is less than negative 3, and then graph it on the number line. So same idea, solve and then graph. Right now we have x is being divided by negative 5. The opposite of dividing by negative 5 would be multiplying by negative 5. When we do that on both sides, these cancel, they were opposites, and we're just left with x. We multiplied by a negative number, that's going to flip our inequality sign, so now it's a greater than. And then we have negative 3 times negative 5, a negative times negative is a positive. So that gets us our solution of x is greater than 15. So once again, you need to first label your number line. So put that number that you're dealing with right in the middle, number 15 is what we have. Label the rest of your number line. Do it on both sides of that number. And we are dealing with x is greater than 15, so we need to put a circle above 15, and we are not shading it in this time because it's just greater than, it cannot be equal to 15. So if x is greater than 15, that means we need to shade again to the right because all of these values on the right here are bigger than 15. Thanks for going through this study guide. If you need to go back to any numbers, feel free to rewind back to the ones you need and pause it where you need to. Good luck on your summative.